GM Legendary, how are you doing?
GM, I'm doing excellent. Excited to record the podcast, and it seems like we are back on track to have a weekly and not a bi-weekly schedule, so that's a very good thing, I'd say.
Yeah, like we recorded last week, didn't we? I'm pretty sure we did.
We did, yeah.
And you were abroad when we... No, you just got back when we recorded. That was good. And in addition to making sure that we're weekly, I think we have crisp audio now from the both of us.
I hope so, yeah. We've been tweaking and fine-tuning the audio a bit, so thank you for staying with us and bearing through the first episodes where we are still, learning and playing around to get the best quality.
That's a very diplomatic response from you. I take all responsibility for all technical issues at all times because it's always my fault and I always have a different excuse. I've moved into the new flat, 3 weeks ago now? But then my mouse stopped working, I told you. So my mouse stopped working and I've got this stream outside of the window, outside of the balcony, and all I was doing for a few days was just imagining or dreaming of throwing this mouse into the stream.
Mm-hmm.
I just really want to get rid of it because it's not working and everything I was trying to do wasn't working. And I just want to throw it out the window. And I want to see it like splash in the water, and then I'll be happy. But yeah, hopefully we've just done the test, so I think they should be working. But we're getting it sorted slowly. This is our 5th episode, I think now.
It is, yeah. Are you still on your toaster setup for your microphone?
No toaster.
No toaster anymore.
You know, the toaster setup is actually part of the better setup when my computer is actually working. That's actually the premium setup at the moment. This is a downgrade because I'm on the laptop.
I see.
But no toaster. So, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Thanks for bearing with us. Today we've got some really exciting stuff to talk about. 2 main broad topics. One is FreeMint season, and the second is Airdrop season, which we launched all the full details for the very first time yesterday, and we've got a pretty good response. So we will go into that in a lot more detail. We'll actually be talking through the deck for the people who want a little bit more context a little bit later. But let's start with FreeMint season, which has been quite exciting for you, Legendary, because you now still own some goblins.
Yes, I am still part of the Goblin Town WTF family, and it's been pretty interesting to watch that project, which started out as a free mint and started with a very clear statement that they don't have any roadmap, any promises, any product, any Discord, anything at all, and just were particularly, let's say, ugly PFPs and not really trying to please the general aesthetic of what most of the other PFP projects tend to fall in, but which also made them pretty unique in their own way. And I remember when I was in VCon and I joined one of their first Twitter spaces, and I was, curious to see what's going to go down and what they're going to talk about. And I had to laugh so much when I realized that they're just making goblin noises and have this this soundtrack in the background. And someone asked about what's the roadmap and what the team has planned, and they were just growling in response and making more goblin noises, and it was pretty interesting. But if you think about it,
that is what made you buy. That is what made you buy.
Yes.
Why is that a buy indicator? Please explain.
It is the strongest buy indicator if the spaces are goblin sounds. No, just kidding. What was interesting to see is actually the marketing. I feel like everything that they tweeted was so on point and was so...
What were they tweeting? I can't understand any of the tweets.
You mean because of the tiny characters, the tiny font that they're using?
I don't read that stuff. Like, if I can't read it, I'm not reading it. No, is it actually in English?
It is English, yeah. It is. Okay. It is English.
It look like those chemistry words where, or a mathematical equation where you've got like a small something squared
Yeah, no,
or
no, they
something to the
certainly have
power of n.
a unique way to spell as well, and they use the tiny font generator. I think that if you just Google tiny font generator, you find it as well, and you can also create this beautifully crafted tweets. But if you actually look at the content, it's hilarious. It's so funny, and they really manage to be fun on, I don't know, 80-90% of the tweets, and hit a micro trending topic within the very same day. So if you think about that on a marketing level, they get so much exposure by just having the tweeting game nailed and just staying so on brand with the goblins, which in some way reminds me a bit of Yuga Labs and the Bored Apes and how they started out building their own community, which obviously is way different from what the goblins are doing, but they are so on brand with everything that they do. And I feel this is there has to be a couple of people that are smart in terms of marketing and what they do behind that, because they generally create a new kind of community that centers around and rallies around the goblins. And I mean, it is a bear market after all, right? And if someone manages to entertain you in a bear market, that for sure gets a lot of attention. So, and of course, they inspired like so many ripoffs of that. I feel like Goblin ripoffs with Goblin Girls, Goblin Pets, Goblin AI is the one trend that we're seeing right now. Lots of free mints that often enough are very interestingly structured. So you have like 3, 4, 5K editions of a PFP with the first 2 or 3K that are free to mint, and the remainder 1 to 2K that are like 0.002 ETH. So like very, very cheap, but making sure that the team at least gets a bit of, money flowing to their wallet. This is, I feel like, one of the major trends that we're seeing right now on the one hand. And the other big thing is the AI, which, started, I feel like, with the Moonbirds, which, had to rename themselves to Nightbirds. Did you see them? Do you have a Moonbird AI, Nightbird AI?
No, I have. I did see them, and I thought they were legitimately quite cool. Like they did look very, very cool. I didn't get any, but one of the things I was speaking to someone recently about this AI stuff is that I would really be interested in finding out what the real process behind AI stuff is. Like, is it AI? Like, how are we defining AI? If it's just, is it computer generated? Because I understand there's some software that you can just generate stuff if you put certain stuff in, and I'm not certain, but mostly because I'm not educated on the process. But I'd be interested to find out what's really going on here. Are all these cheap free mints really AI, or is it just like jumping on the AI bandwagon when really like you just put in an image and it churns out something by an algorithm? So I don't know. Do you know anything about that?
From what I can tell is the Moonbirds, Nightbirds AI are genuinely AI generated images where, an AI has been trained with the images of the original Moonbirds and has been trained to create this AI version of the birds. But from what I've been told, and I've been talking to a couple of people who had a closer look and seem to be more familiar with the process of generating AI art, it seems like some of the ripoffs are just basically, feeding it through an already existing algorithm and using something that resembles more like AI filters and not the actual process of creating AI images. Because from what I've been told is that this takes way longer than that. So you cannot really copy that within 1 day or 2 days. But it was interesting to see, because they're also the Nightbirds, that is started out as a free mint. And they got quite a lot of good traction, also in terms of the floor price, which was moving to 0.2, 0.3. And I think at that time, they were still named the Moonbirds AI. And Kevin Rose did put a tweet out and was like, hey, I appreciate the derivative project, but please respect that, you cannot use the name Moonbirds, and that you should rename yourselves. And I feel like the then Moonbirds, now Nightbirds, did the very, very, very smart thing by reacting super fast to that, renaming them to Nightbirds. I think they got like, they moved the collection name, the collection slug on OpenSea, and in the couple of minutes where this was happening, the floor price plummeted. It went like to 0.07 from the 0.25, 0.3 where it was at the time,
Really?
because people were scared that Kevin Rose was. They didn't know, is he just trying to rename them or is he trying to shut it down, quote unquote shut it down. But then the floor price picked up a lot of steam again. People did buy the dip pretty fast. And I think what, really helped them to get, to become even more legit is a couple of hours later, Kevin Rose did tweet again. And he was like, thank you for being so considerate. And I also got a Nightbird myself. And then they moved up to 0.6-ish, I think.
Gosh.
And it is pretty interesting to see, because I feel like a lot of posts that I did see on Twitter were like, this is the first derivative project where the derivative looks better than the original.
Yeah, they do look cool. They do look cool,
pretty good. Yeah.
The question I have with all this stuff is, I think we're in a space that is really, really immature with respect to IP and copyright. And I think people were really unhappy, from what I could tell, with Kevin Rose's response, even just to ask them to change the name, because I don't think people are really considering, probably not even 10 minutes into the future, but, next week, the month after, the year after. Whereas I think established leaders of projects are thinking in long term, right? And so when you start to think of the long term, you start to think, well, there could be issues moving forward if other people have rights to things that look like our stuff, if they have the similar name to us, if they do all these sorts of things. There are legitimate issues. Like, there is a reason why copyright and IP has been established. That doesn't mean that this new CCO model is worthless or useless in particular instances. But if you're legitimately intending to build a huge brand, you do have to enforce at some point on something. Otherwise you're at risk. Like, I personally feel we're super naive in the space with respect to that stuff. I know that there's a space for CCO and this kind of sharing of stuff, and derivatives are cool, but I'm also very much of the idea that you should be able to protect your copyright if you have been the one building it for a huge period of time.
Yeah. And it is kind of interesting, because even without the derivatives, just using the PFP, right, it creates a kind of unique position. I mean, look at our podcast. We basically have a Moonbird and a Huxley robot talking to each other, right? And we try to create interesting and very good content, which, might help to increase the positive reception of both brands, of the Moonbirds and the Huxleys, because, hey, you see, in the Moonbirds community, there are builders. There's this guy doing the podcast. There's this guy doing this art project, whatnot.
Yeah, when sponsorship? When sponsorship?
Yeah, when sponsorship. But that also is an interesting kind of risk that brands did not really have to deal.
Yeah, no, it's true.
With to the same extent. I mean, of course, you could have like a sponsorship of an athlete wearing Nike or Adidas, and then he, talks about something that's not really acceptable, and they have to end the sponsorship. But here you have people using the PFPs and, talking as Bored Apes. Like, I don't know, the one, I don't remember the name, and it's not really important. The one guy who was like, if you don't have a 6-figure profile picture, then please don't talk to me, and, just get some ETH and get out of your mom's basement. Which you had so many apes reaching out and be like, hey, this is not us. This is just this guy, and trying to kind of protect their brand or community reputation. And this is a new dimension of brand awareness and brand strategy that Web3 project builders and brands have to deal with. It did not exist to the same extent in the space before.
Yeah, you're right. That's really, really cool. And as as you know, I used to specialize in reputation management as a lawyer, and you're completely right. It's such an interesting, different dynamic now for companies or brands to consider, because you don't really get to. Well, I think there is a bit of selection going on. Like these companies, Moonbirds allegedly or supposedly are reaching out to people to try to bring them in. I'm sure Yuga Labs did the same with Bored Apes. Like, I think there is a bit of selection going on, but that doesn't mean that someone with the money can't buy in. So right now, you can buy in with the money. Like, Yuga Labs can't decide whether you buy in or not and start using their thing, which is the thing that, Nike don't have that issue. They will purely select the athletes who they want, and then if they do anything wrong, you cut them and be done with them. You can't buy into being a Nike ambassador. So you're right. That's a super interesting element.
Yeah, and of course, there's not only the risk element to it, there's also a massive opportunity, because you have the builders within the respective communities who work on their own projects and help to amplify, the overall brands, their PFP's reputation, which is also a new dimension that companies did not have to look at before, because you can also think about ways how you can, foster that kind of innovation within your community and try to create positive, brand role models, or however you wanted to call them.
Yeah, I agree. Super interesting. I also want to talk about RektGuy, which is the other main. I'd say there's been two. The AI Moonbirds as well were pretty good, but RektGuy right now is, I think, still on file. Maybe it's dropped off a little bit from yesterday. It got some pretty big support from both people within the community and outside, with Snoop Dogg getting wrecked, I think, at Saturday night at some point, while OSF was getting wrecked on a stag in Newcastle, which was kind of funny. But I think that one's pretty cool as well. What have you thought about that? Do you have one of those?
Unfortunately, I don't. I did have the
You've got Goblins.
I have the Goblins. Yeah. No, I don't have a RektGuy. Unfortunately, I don't. And when I saw Snoop Dogg changing his profile picture, I was like, "Yup, this is where the FOMO kicks in."
Yeah, that was pretty fun. It is amazing the reach of this world increasingly, like who is interested in it, how far it's able to go. I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's impressive, and it's also, it goes to show how small the space still is if you just have one person changing their profile picture. I mean, of course, it is Snoop Dogg with a massive, massive reach, but still, it's just a single person who can, change the floor price so much. And it reminded me of VCon, where the last talk was Gary Vee and Snoop Dogg, and they were talking about the conference tickets, and they were like, by the way, conference tickets were like at 0.2, 0.18, something like that. And by the way, for all those who are holding and keep holding a conference ticket, there's going to be a reward, and that will be a collab with Snoop Dogg in some form. And we were the first to hear that the conference, and everyone just got their phones out and tried to buy more. OpenSea crashed, and when it, I think I tried buying with Genie, and when OpenSea was back to working, they pumped up all the way to 0.8, 0.9, and even a couple of sales at 1 ETH. So they did a 5x in 15, 20 minutes. So it shows you two things. It shows you like how small the communities still are, how early we are on the one hand, and on the other hand, just how passionate people are about their projects. And if they get exciting news or they see someone exciting, coming aboard, you'll see massive movements in activity.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think about the FreeMint model more generally? So I know we're obviously in a bear market. I think there's a few factors. One is like, look, we're in a bear market. I don't know to what extent that is the reason why they are being successful and people wouldn't have paid for any of them. Do you think there's any merit in that?
Yes and no. So yes, it is. What's very likable about it, that basically anyone can, join a free mint, pay $5-6 in gas fees, and get into a project. This is, very, very positive because you can start building a community from scratch that is very inclusive towards new people in the space who do not have the funds to get into moonbirds, apes, or whatever. On the other hand, you see so many free projects that are just rug pulls, very quick pump and dumps. So there's the noise just amplified, and I feel like it gets even more difficult, to find the genuine projects within within the free mints. For example, there also was the project Atmos Genesis, which is basically very interesting because they are utilizing the Twitter banner format, and they plan to start out as a 0.2 ETH mint. I think they had a couple of issues, which I cannot describe exactly what happened. And then last minute they changed it to a free mint, and people had the expectation of it being a premium mint at 0.2, turned into a free mint, minted out, generated massive volume, and of course the creators benefit off the royalties. So my point is, if you're extremely confident about your project and you think you're here for the long term and you want to build, it really does not matter if you start out as a free mint or not in terms of your own revenues. I mean, look at the Goblins. I don't know the Goblins royalties, if it's like 5%, whatever, but they made 13,000 or 13.5k ETH in total volume on OpenSea, and the benefit of the secondary royalties. And if you're really building for the long term, then it's very, very likely, if you're successful, that the royalties of the secondary market are going to be far more than your initial sale. It really becomes a question of what you're building, what's the budget that you need. Can you start out with a free mint? Can you then build whatever you're trying to build, or do you need a certain budget that you have to plan for to build the product that you want to work on, and that requires you to have a primary sale that is not a free mint, but that just collects some ETH?
Yeah. Do you think so? I mean, this might be a nice way to transition into our own project as we discuss some of the details, the deck, and just some of the other considerations we went through, so people can get a sense of the trials and tribulations and the decision-making processes of leading a project to market.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever realistically, in your own mind, I don't know if we necessarily spoke about it, but did you ever in your own mind realistically consider the free mint option for our own project?
I did not. No, I didn't. And I didn't for a very particular reason, because with Airdrop Season 1, we are building a product that focuses on a specific, scope, has a very specific scope for a limited amount of time, where we want to create, the maximum value for that Arbitrum Odyssey campaign that we're going to talk about more later. And it's just for 2 months. And after that, we might want to work on another Airdrop season. We want to work on a completely different product. So it is not a PFP that tries to establish a community that's going to, exist over a couple of years and create a long-lasting brand. It's an actual product with an actual scope, which is limited in time. So in that perspective, in my mind, a free mint would not make as much sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are probably, as you said, there's probably arguments for it, in the sense that, if you're super confident, you could give it for free, then it would find a flaw. But I think, almost from a philosophical perspective, I think that we've got I think things which are valuable should cost some money. Like, and I don't think there should be an incentive to the degree of almost tricking people or in coaxing people in on the basis of price.
Yeah.
Especially for real products. I remember when, for example, when I used to be a teacher, I used to never give, I mean, this will sound really mean, but I used to never give real rewards, like tangible rewards. Like some teachers might have given kids sweets, for example, if they did something good, or they would give people, I don't know, something like an actual physical reward for doing their work well. But my position was always, no, I'm not coaxing you in to do something that you're supposed to do with anything other than the reason that you should be doing it. So for me, the reason for delivering this product is to provide educational value. And that's why, if you want the educational value, then that's why you should be entering. You shouldn't be entering the educational value space because it's free. In the same way, like you don't choose, I know lots of places in Europe have university, which is free. We do not now in the UK, but I'm sure, or I would hope it to be the case, that the reason why people go to university isn't because it's free. It should be because you want to actually do the thing that you choose to study there. And so that's my kind of thinking on it, where I think for the setting up of a community and for a setting up of a product who are going to be working together over a period of time, I would much rather people pay in to prove that as a confirmation that they want to be there, rather than have the secondary aspect of this product, I think, is irrelevant to me, really. If anything, I remember I was speaking to you about this. I didn't really conceptually even really want to put a cap on the supply of this, because if it's good education, I would rather, tens of thousands of people read it. Now we obviously don't have that demand. I don't think there's not even that many people in the space. But philosophically, I would rather as many people have access to the education that they want. So I would rather those people buy off primary rather than participate in some sort of flipping game on the secondary. So that was my thinking on it. What do you think about that?
I very much agree, because I don't know, it feels kind of weird if you have an educational product that people are flipping, basically, flipping the entry price to get education. And this is why I, philosophically also liked your approach very much of keeping this as kind of a perpetual open edition, so that, if someone wants to get in and wants to learn about what we are talking about in Airdrop Szn, they can, and we can, assure that they can get in at the product's primary price and don't have to pay the markup on the secondary. But we also both know how the NFT space works, and I feel like, we're discussing back and forth and trying to find like kind of a middle ground that makes sense from our, let's call it, educational perspective, but also makes sense for the, what the NFT audience is, well, what they familiarized with, what they are used to in terms of, the structure of a product, the structure of an NFT sale.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also the element of the community management to some degree. It's like, look, this is our first offering to market. Not saying it necessarily would, but it would probably be unhelpful to have multiple tens of thousands of people trying to manage that in our first offering. So I think I think we achieved a middle ground where we've got a good number of people. We're aiming for a good number of people. It's not humongous, so it should be manageable. And it's also got a 32 in it. So that's the name of the company. That's the number we went for. Everyone thinks there's like some long decision-making process, and really we just added a couple of zeros on 32.
That certainly is the case. So, by the way, why I know I asked you off the record, but how did you come up with the name of 32 Dreams?
So 32 Dreams everyone asks me this and they assume it's because, for some weird reason, people assume it's because I am 32. And but I don't understand why that would be the reason why I would name the company that, because that would be stupid. No, the real reason was when I first got into the space, or the first reason is the reason that I got into the space was, or one of my first objectives was to get 32 ETH, because you need 32 ETH to become a validator of the network. And I thought, the more I started to learn about things, I thought, this is really cool. Like, it's cool, the decentralized element, and it's cool that you can participate in that system if you are able to put up this amount of capital. So it was like my first goal in the space. Beyond that, so that's where the number came from. And then 32 Dreams, well, it just sounds kind of cool, I think, but it's also indicative of how I felt about the space, where I feel like there's just so much opportunity. It's a space filled with opportunity, filled with dreams, filled with the chance to progress, contribute, excel, and achieve something which, you probably didn't think that you could before. I would say already at this point, I've already done so much more than I would have thought I could have in a year in the space. And so, in some respect, I'm at least going after my dreams. I haven't achieved all of them yet, but I have a lot of dreams. I've got a few crackpot ones as well, which are completely unrelated to the space. So yeah, if you add them all up, maybe it gets to 32. I don't know.
So at one point we might see a thread, your 32 dreams, listing them all on a Twitter thread.
Yeah. I'll try to do that at some point. So let's get into the offering. So yesterday, 32 Dreams put out the full information for our first product, which is obviously Airdrop Season. Many people are already familiar with that. For the people who aren't, the information is all out there in the Twitter thread. It was released fully in my B-Check paper, which is my Substack article, which comes out usually every Saturday or Sunday each week. It's in paper 21. And the response has been pretty good. I mean, we'd already had responses last week, right?
Yeah.
Where we've been collecting the round for the first set of whitelists, which was exclusive to the subscribers of the B-Check papers. But the response yesterday was pretty wild, because it was the first time it was like fully articulated on Twitter. And the Substack response was like completely wild. Although I made it pretty clear that first round of whitelists for the subscribers is closed, I have had more than 300 subscribers overnight. And so I think the subscriber list has gone from 500 and something to now 850. And it just keeps going up, to the point where I don't even know, are these real people? Is it bots? I don't know.
Did you have a look at a couple of addresses to get a feeling for, real people versus bots?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't really know. As I said, there were lots of Chinese names, both like Chinese written names as well as Chinese characters. Also lots of kind of Ethereum style anonymous, like 0x something at Gmail or whatever. But yeah, I'm not super familiar with bots, so I don't know how much this is authentic people and how much it is, people trying to get on the whitelist because they saw the letters WL in a tweet. But I don't know, are bots able to like follow instructions? Because I did have to say specifically what they need to do. And also they're all doing it wrong. So they're not very smart bots in that respect, because I said that, subscribing now is no good. So hopefully they're just people who are subscribing because they're interested.
Yeah, so we hope for genuine FOMO, basically. But no, but from what you've been telling me, I think it is a good amount of genuine interest that has been sparked with a Twitter thread and people that subscribed because of that. And probably a couple of bots in there, but that's, almost impossible to avoid these days. But I think the majority looks pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And also even on, because, the first thing I said was to just DM me as a starting point to signal your interest for the next round of whitelists. And I've got a ton of messages as well. So we're going to start looking at those in the next day or two, and then disclose more closely and more precisely what the next rounds will look like, essentially.
Sounds good. Shall we quickly have a look at the deck and just go through it?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's just look at the things and provide a bit more context for the people who, just would like some commentary over the top of it, really. So we start with the Why Us section, and I guess what we wanted to do here was just put forward our credentials, right? And I think the reason why we're doing this is not just to literally talk through it, but it's in part to explain to people why we made the decisions we made, and to provide this sort of context for what we think projects should be doing so that people can make the best informed decisions moving forward. So hopefully this is helpful from a kind of founder perspective.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're building something yourself, it hopefully is helpful when we provide a bit of context on what we are kind of thinking behind the scenes on the content that we put out eventually.
Yeah, so the Why Us section, I personally think, and I did this in the speech I did the other day at the NFT UK London event, I think it's really important to start with some story and not dive into product. I think it's really, it never feels right to me when either there's an interview or a speech and people dive straight into the product. I think it's always really, really helpful to have some narrative about who the people are, so that people can warm up to the people and think like, okay, cool. This is why I am listening to you. This is why you are well placed for me to get involved in your ecosystem. I think that's really, really important at the beginning.
Yeah, and I mean, I get quite a lot of pitch decks by startups, and see that they have the team section at the very end, and I know that it's custom
really
to do that way.
Yeah,
but I feel like
it is custom, isn't it?
Especially in that space, you invest in people. If you buy an NFT that doesn't have a roadmap, that doesn't have a Discord, or that does have a roadmap and does have a Discord, ultimately you do invest in the team and you do invest in the founders because something made you believe in them. And I don't know, for that reason, I also like starting with the people behind the product and not with the product itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. You're right though. I'd never thought about that, but it's definitely custom, because I remember the slide decks we used to have at our law firm, and the people would always be like a throwaway thing at the end, just like, yeah, and here's the team, and you don't really need to know who they are. They'll just get the work done. When actually, I completely agree. It's more important who we are, because arguably the product that we're providing, like, there are ways, and look, the cynical person would say, well, this information is out there. If you wanted it, there are people who are providing this information for free. And it's like, yes, that's true. But that's true of everything. Like, you can literally find out anything now in the world if you want to. The value that we would be putting forward is like, look, you in particular have the deep, specific experience and knowledge of decentralized finance and airdrops. That is super, super valuable. So that's like a centralized point of knowledge. And my experience is specifically in explaining complex ideas in a simple way. And that's why together, I think we're well placed to put something forward to people who don't understand this stuff really, really easily, or who don't have the time. So I think knowing that going into the rest of the presentation is why having that first part there is so useful.
Yeah, I very much agree. All right.
And what did we do after that?
After that, we jumped into the opportunity, which interestingly enough, because we did publish the deck with DocSend, which again is also a tool that a lot of startups use to send their decks to VCs because it has a couple of neat features. And one is it gives you very detailed metrics. So you basically can look at the average time spent on each slide and get a very good feeling where people spend the most time on your slide deck. And I don't know, I probably
this is cool.
And we both would have expected that, right? Because we did place the opportunity quite at the beginning of our deck, that this is one of the slides where people might spend more time on, but that really wasn't the case. But it's kind of the slide, where we try to explain a bit what's the historical background of airdrops, why they've been successful in the past, have a couple of figures in there, and just have a quick paragraph about why we think that 2022 is going to be an interesting year for layer 2 solutions and airdrops in particular. But it also just might be, if I'm just talking about it right now and thinking about that, due to the fact that people are familiar with the popularity of airdrops and its kind of ongoing information, and I don't want to call it noise, but it's always news around airdrops, people claiming that amount, people claiming this amount. So it is somehow anchored in people's minds that yes, airdrops are a thing, and they don't really necessarily need that much information on the opportunity because they are kind of well aware of that. But I feel like it still makes sense to offer that information to someone who might not have it up front, so they can read through it. And if they're familiar with what's going on with airdrops, of course, they can always skip the slide.
Yeah, I agree. This will be really cool actually to see what people spend time on.
Yeah,
it's a really cool feature. I didn't know that was possible, but that's going to be a really interesting thing to look at. And I think the reason why I decided to go, well, I think it's very important to present an opportunity and deal with a problem. So when I was telling you already off air, when I spoke to Brendan Mulligan of FreeMint, his main advice for building a product in the space was deal with an actual problem. Mm-hmm. Lots of things are being built, and when someone is asked the question, well, who is going to buy this? They just think, well, everyone. Well, yeah, it's cool, so everyone will buy it. Like, it's interesting, so it's for everyone. And that's not starting with a problem, that's starting with a cool idea and just hoping that people buy. So we wanted to know that there was a real opportunity and be able to articulate very clearly why people are not able to achieve that opportunity. Because if there's an opportunity but there's no problem for people to achieve the opportunity, then there's no product. There's no need for a product because people are already able to access their opportunity very easily. But the fact that there were 3 very clear problems in our mind for the achievement of the opportunity meant that we could present the product in a compelling way, I think.
Yeah, and I think this is something, founders should be aware of to really try to get a realistic feeling for what the target market is. And especially, even if you think that NFT people or NFT world is still a very small world, you can't be like, well, NFT people are our target market, because it's not like, it's not precise, it's not concrete enough. You have to try to get a very, very precise picture of who your target customer would be, why they would be your target customer, and why they just fit in your target demographic.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I know you have these kind of consultancy conversations with people as well, and I've started to do the same recently. And one of the things that comes up is people people seem to think that crypto / Web3 people is a target audience.
Yeah.
And they think like, well, we're trying to bring in Web3 or NFT or crypto, Twitter capital. And I think that moves, that's not really focusing on the product or a problem, is it?
Like, yeah, not at all. And it doesn't work like that because there isn't, quote unquote Web3 people. There's people interested in decentralized finance. There's NFT degens. There are people who, just got into NFTs because of a single community like the VFriends that we, did see at VCon, where you have people whose only exposure to NFT are the VFriends, and they're trying to learn and trying to take it from there and see what they're interested in. You have people who are into the gaming part of it. You have people who are obviously into the tech part of it all. You just don't have a typical, Web3 or quote unquote NFT person. And you have to be well aware of the fact that even though it is still a small world, you have many subsets of different groups and people in there and different communities in there. And you cannot, talk to all of them at once. They all have different kind of languages, interests, and are just different customer groups after all.
Yeah, and they all have different problems.
Yeah, exactly.
And your product, they have different problems, different interests, and so your product has to appeal to their product or interest, not the fact that they have a MetaMask wallet. So yeah, that's a really good point. So we articulated the the opportunity, the problem, and the solutions. Were they viewed in equal amounts? Like, what did people spend the most time on?
What's your guess?
Were they even interested at all? Of those three?
Well, what's your guess of those three? What's the most popular one?
The solution.
Exactly. And I love that. I love that people spend the least time on the problem. They're like, I don't want to have more problems. I want to see a solution. And I don't know. I kind of like it. The solution is the second most popular slide in the overall deck. So, the
interesting.
Least popular slide is the problem. It is literally people spent an average of 4 seconds on, the problem slide. So basically almost everyone just really skimmed or even skipped it.
That's hilarious.
Because they're like, if I get the solution, I understand the problem, probably, right?
Yeah, maybe.
But I like the positivity of that people don't focus on problems, but focus on the solution. Like the solution slide
that's true.
Almost has an average view time of 25 seconds. And that also, by the way, accounts for people that just skip through the entire presentation. So if you look at it in relative terms, people spend 5 times more time on the solution than the problem. And I don't know, kind of like the message of that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's really cool. That is, that's really insightful. And actually, yeah, that's definitely interesting. But you said the solution was the second most slide. The next slide was the actual details of the NFT.
Yes, the NFT.
And that was
the most popular slide. Yeah, with people almost spending like 45 seconds, so almost a minute on that slide.
Interesting.
To understand,
I think it's right to hold the key slide back, though, right? Like, because I think about this in terms of structure when I write my papers as well sometimes, and sometimes I put something really important at the beginning, and then I think, if they were to read that straight away, then are they going to read the rest? In what way? Like I think sometimes you need to draw people into the final point, but equally sometimes you need to lead with it. And I think in this case, I felt it was more important to have people understand the problem, the opportunity, the problem, and the solution, and then hit them with the product, rather than the other way around. Because then I think that those numbers could have been even lower for the problem, opportunity, and solution if they had seen the NFT details kind of at the beginning. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. And, on top of that, we did start with what I feel is an important slide, which was the team slide, trying to explain why we are competent and capable of building the product that we're actually building, and then trying to provide a bit of context that, well, most people did not spend that much time on reading that. and then really getting to the centerpiece, which is the actual NFT, which is explaining, that Airdrop Season 1 is an educational NFT, that we are focusing on the Arbitrum Odyssey campaign, that the purpose of the token is to access our token-gated Discord, where we will have all the guides and all the specific knowledge to be able to provide the best way to navigate through all the challenges and quests of the Arbitrum Odyssey campaign, and then getting into the details of the sales price, number of tokens, secondary royalties, etc. So it's kind of like the product one pager. So it makes sense that people spend more time on getting all these details and numbers.
Did people look? Well, I mean, this is only so far, right? We only released it yesterday evening, this is very early data. It's not like this is definitive, really. But have people so far looked that much at the Arbitrary Odyssey campaign in particular?
In what way do you mean that?
As in, so there's one slide which is dedicated to the Arbitrum Odyssey campaign.
Oh, this is the next slide. Yeah. Yeah, it's also pretty popular. It's also like around the half-minute mark in terms of average views, where we explain what the Arbitrum Odyssey campaign is.
Yeah, okay, that's not bad. And then the next bit about, because I thought it was quite important, because I am one of the people who will, for whom the product is really being built, in the sense that I'm certainly not an expert in decentralized finance and airdrops. That's your specialty. I'm part of the kind of part of the machine that's going to be communicating this. And so I think there are many people who are in the same bucket as me, who are like, okay, well, what am I actually going to do? Like, I don't get it. Like, conceptually, I pay this money and I come in this Discord, but like, what do I do? Like, what am I going to be doing with, it's quite difficult to conceptualize. So I thought it was really important to have a slide where we just gave a few kind of tangible examples of, this is what you might be doing on layer 2, and this is what we are doing. We're not solely telling you what to do. We are like kind of strategizing a optimum route for interactions on the protocols. There's more behind it to that. So I thought it was quite important to have this, to give people a bit more of a sense of, okay, this is what we're practically doing.
Yeah. To be able to relate to the product, to be able to know, okay, I'm going to provide liquidity, I'm going to buy an NFT, or I'm going to play an NFT game, I'm going to use a couple of exchanges or swaps, or I'm going to play around with derivatives. So if you're not super familiar with the world of decentralized finance or with the Arbitrum Odyssey campaign overall, I absolutely get the need to get the precise information, what it actually is that you're going to do with your time in the Discord, and what the guides are going to be on that we are writing for the campaign. In terms,
I agree.
In terms of the popularity, it was significantly lower. It was like around the 15-second mark in terms of the average time spent of that page. But I also feel like the last two slides with the actual product and the Odyssey campaign, are like super rich in information. They have the most text on, because they are like kind of the centerpieces of the entire slide deck, besides the team slide. So I also feel like, it was a lot of input, and this is, the attention span of the average viewer is only like so high, especially these days where we're like overloaded with information. So I feel like it's super helpful that the slide is there. And I wouldn't, if you're building something like that for yourself and use DocSend to get all that data, I just wouldn't over analyze it. I would just try to figure out the general indication to see, okay, what's the most popular piece of content? That's a very good thing to know. It's also good to know what's the least popular piece of the slide deck, because it might help you to find out a slide that you can like completely eliminate, or at least move to the back, and helps you to build it like that. And then of course you can create a new version and test it versus your previous version, and just get a general feeling.
Yes, I think that makes sense. You don't need to overanalyze the stuff too much. And I think my final thought on that part is that if, for example, you read those slides and think, oh, that's super easy, I know how to do all that stuff already, I don't need help with these things, like, that's cool. That's completely cool. This is, our product is most likely not for the most sophisticated and committed users of decentralized finance. Like, if you are both very sophisticated at using these products and have the time to stay on top of all of the information in a way that means that you will always know what opportunities are around, then yeah, you definitely do not need this product.
Yeah, I mean, after all, it's, you're exchanging ETH for convenience to save time that you would be spending researching yourself. But if you have been doing very well for the last year in terms of airdrops, you are super familiar with decentralized finance and layer 2 protocols, then you're definitely not in the, target customer audience for this product. And I feel like this is also an important thing to mention, because I don't want to market it to people who, for whom the product won't be beneficial, because they won't be happy with that. And I'm actually, of the mind that I want to build a product, that we want to build a product that is generally helpful for the people. And this is why it's so important to know what your target customer group is, and to know like who's to know what problems you're solving and for who you're solving that problems, and to know the segment or the different audiences out there that don't need your solution because they figured it out by themselves already.
Yeah. And it sort of goes back to that previous point, doesn't it? About knowing the target market and not thinking that the target market is everyone. Yeah. Our target market is not everyone who wants an airdrop, because everyone does want an airdrop. Like, literally, there isn't a person who doesn't want an airdrop, but that's not our target market. Our target market is the people who need to learn and need a bit of help in trying to understand how to participate in these protocols. So that's, I think, a really helpful way of thinking about it. We then, on the next slide, have the points to note, which is the longest slide on the deck, because it has all of the carve outs, all of the things that, the kind of legal, administrative, practical points that people really, really, really need to understand before they buy, if they are super unfamiliar. I'm sure many people who are more native to the space kind of know this stuff already. Yeah. They know, for example, that, there's smart contract risk when you interact with various protocols, but it's the kind of stuff that has to be said somewhere, and it's very, very important. Did people like that? Did people look at it?
It is more popular than the what you might actually be doing slide, but it's around the 12-second mark, so it's not overly popular. But I feel like it's a very, very important slide nonetheless. And we have like 6 points to note in there, as you said: smart contract risk and a couple of various other points. But the first one is actually my favorite one, where we have, again, particularly stating what the NFT is, and it's for Airdrop Season 1 only. And you beautifully worded it that we do not believe it is wise to promise future seasons yet, but any further seasons will give some sort of priority and or benefit to Airdrop Season 1 NFT holders. And I like to have this very precise scope of a product, because it is a product. It's not a PFP, right? It is not a community that we're building. It is a product. And I like that we have the precise scope and tell what it is about, and also like be very frank about what's outside the scope. And it's not a lifetime pass to all airdrop seasons in the future and airdrop related content that we're committing to for the next 2 years. But, if we see this is of interest, and if we see similar opportunities that are as well significant as the Arbitrum Odyssey campaign, we could see ourselves building a future season. And of course, we would think how what the smartest way would be to reward season 1 holders and early participators and our early supporters, of course, but we don't want to commit or promise something at a point in time where we just can't do that.
Yeah, we'll have to see what we think that there are opportunities for further seasons without a doubt, but we have to see how things practically happen during the course of season 1, so that we can best design season 2. Because to be, and this is the important thing, another thing that we need to make clear, which is actually another one of the points in there, which is that we're not in control of the broader market, and B, Arbitrum's scheduling. Like, this one will be very much informed by what Arbitrum decide for various things and the protocols there. So season 2, if it isn't on Arbitrum and it's not got an 8-week schedule, could be completely different. It could be like a completely different course, a completely different cohort, maybe similar in kind of core content, in that our core value proposition would be the same. But in terms of the style and the schedule, it might be completely different. So we just have to take that and decide as we progress, and to identify and decide a bit later, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like it's super important to be, transparent, honest, and upfront about that, and not create a roadmap that we're not going to be able to deliver on, because there is all these external factors that you just mentioned, and it just doesn't make sense to put in that promise at this point in time.
Yeah, a kind of separate point on the lifetime kind of pass thing. I'm a bit skeptical of the idea of these things anyway. I mean, as a lawyer, I would advise, whether you're an artist, creator, anyone in this space, don't say something's for your lifetime. Not yet. Like, just say a year or say 2 years or something, but don't say lifetime just yet, because it's so open-ended that it almost doesn't make any sense at all. So yeah, okay, we're running out of time. So we then have the final slide where we look at everything at a glance. I think people, and I got a lot of DMs, which, because it said DM me to express further interest, so I guess people were looking at that. But overall, what was your general feeling about the reception and how we went about the process?
Overall, I'm pretty happy with the deck, because we also created like two pagers, and we're thinking quite a lot about what is the best way to put the information out there. And
2 1-pagers,
not 2 pages. 2 1-pagers. Yeah, thank you. So we were thinking about the best way to put this information out there, and I don't know, maybe it's just me being a consultant, but I like those decks. But even if I look at the DocSend statistics, and we see that we have like 40% drop off, which I feel like is very good, because it means that more than half of the people made it to the last slide, is a pretty good statistic to have. But I feel like with content is, it's not only what you like, it's way more important what your audience likes, and everyone has like different preferences. And I think for that reason, we have the 2 1-pagers, we have the Twitter threads, we have the podcast where we just went over the entire deck, we have the deck itself. People always, are reaching out to us in our DMs. So it's important to just have multiple sources of information, and just try to provide an information package in a way that's structured, so that your audience can relate to it, that they like it, and they have different preferences. So you have to do the extra work and structure it in many more ways, and just not have one single piece of information out there. That's just not enough.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and I think we'll close on that, because when I was a teacher as well, we often used to speak about people's different learning styles. Some are visual, some are audio, some are, I think they're kinetic. So it's like they learn by moving. I don't know if we'll be able to provide any kinetic style learning for the course, but it's definitely something we'll be mindful of as we produce content for Airdrop Season NFT holders where I have no plans to just dump words on the community. Like I think that's low effort. It's not considerate of how people actually learn and understand things. We will do our very best to provide like a variety of media, and we will explore a variety of media depending on what information needs to be conveyed. And that's where my skill set should come in, to kind of make sure we're presenting it in the right variety of ways to make sure people understand.
Beautiful closing words. Let's leave it on that note.
Very nice, man. Good chat. Let's do it again on our weekly schedule next week, which we're very good at keeping to at the moment.
All right. See ya.
Come on. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.